I'm Jim Price, the Jim Price Show Daily Update. I do appreciate guys all tuning in. It is March 13th. It's a Monday, 2023. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here. As we know, the world around us is collapsing with financial distress and all the other good stuff, including Fauci Ouchie and his lies that continue to be uncovered, and also the Uncle Joe and his dealings with his son have really not gotten any better with age, and in fact, they continue to get worse. And we know that they've been lying to us because we know it was snowing in Kiev on the day he visited there, February 20th. You can look it up yourself, and you can look at the videos of him meeting a what they said was a stunt double, according to the BBC. So, guys, I don't know. You tell me where you want to end up on this whole thing, and I'll join you. But again, where does it all start? It starts right here in your heart, where you got to be in the right place at the right time. I do have a special guest with me, John. I'll go to introduce yourself and how we can find you. We'll go from there.
So my name is John Gentry. I have a website, WeThePeopleV50.com. I was a former Force Recon Marine for 8 years and practiced as a CPA for more than 20 years. And my work today is taking stand against rampant corruption in government, and most importantly, to restore the fundamental right of remonstrance, which is the direct, I mean, literally direct voice of the people in our legislative houses. It's a constitutional right that we have, and I'm working to restore that right. And thank you for having me on and share this knowledge with the people.
Well, absolutely. Now, how did you, so you were in, you said you were in Force Recon. How did you get, what branch you were in? Army then? And then how did you get to that level?
No, it's Marine Corps. I joined the Marine Corps.
Sorry.
2 months after I turned 17, and by the time I was 18, I volunteered for 2nd Force Reconnaissance Company. Most people don't know what Recon Marines are, but it's kind of like a Navy SEAL. We do a lot of the same insertion techniques and a lot of the same mission profiles that the SEALs have. We think we're a little bit better, but
I was in the Marine ROTC in high school, and I tell you that I do believe the Marines are a separate cut of men above the others. You know, the Air Force. I was Air Force, but I will tell you that the Marines are a special cut of guys, and I believe in everything they're doing. It's great that they're out there doing that. So, if you want to tell me that you're a cut above the Army, I'm not going to doubt that for a second, because I have seen it in real time. So, thank you for your service, sir.
So what this work is about, if you look at the First Amendment, everybody thinks freedom of speech, freedom of religion, but it has the right to petition for redress of grievances.
Right.
And if you ask anybody out there, what does that right mean? Like, how do you exercise that right? What can you accomplish with that right? Nobody knows. I mean, this is literally like if it were wiped from our collective knowledge that we have a right of free speech and nobody knew about it. And then suddenly you discovered how incredibly powerful the right of free speech is. That's what the right to petition for redress of grievance is. And it's actually more powerful. This right is more powerful than the right of free speech and the right to bear arms. Mm-hmm. This right is how we take down corruption. It's how we have a voice. It's how we stop government overreach, during the pandemic. It's how we restore election integrity. It's how we actually finally achieve term limits in our state and United States Congress legislative houses. I mean, literally, when this right is restored to its full magnitude, we can accomplish everything that we've wanted to do in this country.
Right. Well, and as you've gone down this path, what got you started after the Marine Corps? What got you started on this path here?
Well, I was involved in corrupt court proceedings, and I'm not one to have my rights trampled on. And so I took a lawsuit against attorneys and judges, and I took it all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, 2 cases.
Wow.
And I couldn't get heard. And it's extremely difficult to get docketed in the Supreme Court of the United States. Mm-hmm. Thousands of pages, tens of thousands of dollars spent, and I couldn't get heard. They literally just said, judges are above the law. That is literally the answer from the federal courts, is you can't sue a judge.
Yeah.
Contrary to what the law says, the courts won't allow you to sue a judge. So I was like, okay, you think after you go to the Supreme Court, you're done.
Right.
You can't go anywhere else. Well, I'm like, well, I'm not getting remedy in the judicial branch. How can I get remedy in the legislative branch? And so that's when I started studying about the Constitution. I was looking at my state constitution, and this is in every state constitution. I think maybe North Dakota is weak or has very little of it, but this is in every state constitution. In Tennessee Constitution, people have the right to peaceably assemble for their common good, to instruct our representatives, and here's the important part, to apply to those invested with the powers of government for redress of grievance or other proper purposes by address or remonstrance.
Right.
So there's 13 states that have the right to orally address those invested with the powers of government, which includes the General Assembly. You know, our House and our Senate, our Constitution says we have a constitutional right to orally address them. So I exercised that right in 2019. They actually had they call it a typo in the Tennessee Constitution. Really? The actual language says by address or remonstrance. When I read the Constitution on the General Assembly website, it said by address of remonstrance. So I didn't know at the time that I had a right to orally address them.
Right.
So, and then I exercised that right a second time in the General Assembly. And what government is doing now is they're trying to oppress this right. Can I share my screen? I want to show you. All right, so this is 39-second announcement of my petition on the floor of the Tennessee House of Representatives.
Next order, Mr. Clerk. Petitions and memorials. Mr. Clerk. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Rule 15, we have a brief statement regarding a petition of remonstrance statement filed by Representative Halsey. It reads, I'm approaching the Tennessee House Chief Clerk on behalf of Mr. John Gentry with this petition and statement. It involves a petition of grievances. 1, unconstitutional and void statutes. 2, failure to address grievances. 3, judicial reform. 4, reinstitution of constitutionally guaranteed rights. Signed, Bud Halsey, Tennessee State Representative.
That's the first time that right has been exercised since the year 1850.
Really?
It's been 170 years since anybody exercised that right. And with myself as a single citizen remonstrating to my General Assembly, they vacated the entire Tennessee Board of Judicial Conduct. There's about 12 or 14 judges. They threw them out of office. You're not doing your job. And then they reconstituted that agency from all judges to 8 judges, 4 attorneys, and 6 citizens.
Right.
So now we're starting to get a little better objective oversight of our judiciary here in Tennessee because of that one single document. And let me show you some evidence here, and I'll share my screen again. We're going to look at, this is Library of Congress. We're looking at congressional records, evidencing petitions, because this right is in the state constitution. It's also in the federal constitution, right? The petition for redress of grievance.
Right.
And in the United States House of Representatives, rules of order, legislative houses have rules of order just like courts have rules of procedure.
Right.
In the U.S. House, it's Rule 12, Section 3. A member having a petition shall file it with the clerk, and it shall be entered into the congressional record. I mean, this is an incredibly powerful right. So let's look at some evidence of this right here. So this is the United States Congress Library of Congress website, and this is from the Annals of Congress. It's the fourth Congress first session, right. And anybody can access this and look at this. So here, the House resolved itself into a committee of the whole on the report upon the petition of Jonathan Hastings, Deputy Postmaster of Boston. And here, Mr. Swanwick presented a petition and memorial from this company in Philadelphia, praying that a bill proposed to repeal an act allowing a drawback on exported snuff might be repealed. And in here, the memorial was referred to the committee on the whole, to whom the bill on the subject is recommitted. So they literally took that and sent a bill back to committee on a petition with a company that was filed in there. And this is on the United States Senate website. They used to read Washington's farewell address, and which I encourage your viewers to go out and read Washington's farewell address. He gave the most solemn warning about corruption of parties. And everything that he predicted in there is happening today. Division amongst the people, riots in the streets, all that stuff. Washington said if we allow this demon of political party, it's going to destroy everything that we fought for. But here on the Senate website, you can see citizens of Philadelphia petitioned the Congress to read Washington's farewell address. And they set that as an annual, or every time a new Congress would get elected, they would read Washington's farewell address. And that went all the way from 1888 till 1982. And I guess in the 80s, they figured, well, this is too much of a rebuff against political parties, so we're going to stop reading the warnings, from our founding father. So, Jim, I mean, you can clearly see here in the United States Congress, and on the U.S. Senate website, that our legislative houses in the United States Congress used to receive petitions, and it's right in their House rules.
Right.
I'll share another one here for you. This is in the Tennessee Archives Library. So I went down and started doing some research on this right being exercised in the legislative houses. And file's a little bit big, it's an image, but this should come up here in a second. So this is coming up. This is a petition that was filed with the Tennessee General Assembly in the year 1801. And it says, to the Honorable General Assembly, the state of Tennessee now sitting, whereas your humble petitioner humbly showeth that he was so unfortunate as to become lack for the appearance of a certain Archibald affair at a superior court of law, and he failing to appear, he became forfeited for the sum of $100. So that was actually my fifth great grandfather, Jesse Gentry.
Right.
This is the House Journal from 1831, the Tennessee House of Representatives. And inside that journal is evidence of this right. Mr. McGahee from the Committee on Propositions and Grievances. So right there, they used to have, our legislative houses, they used to have a Propositions and Grievances Committee. Can you imagine? Imagine that?
That'd be great.
Where that committee heard petitions from the people. This is what our government is supposed to be about. So here, Mr. McGahee from the same committee made a report on the petitions of Baker, Stanley, Rogers, and Sarah, and resolution therein contained was concurred. The petitioner's prayer ought not be granted. And one more here.
Okay.
Actually, this one. So Mr. Hurst presented a petition of Alan Jack praying for divorce. Mr. Claiborne presented a petition of Baptist McComb referred to the Committee on Claims. Mr. Harlan presented a petition of Joseph Nolan praying the passage of an act authorizing him to hawk and peddle without a license referred to the Propositions and Grievances Committee. So you can clearly see in our United States Congress, in our state legislative houses, petitions were received.
Right.
Now let's talk about, go ahead, did you have something?
No, right. I was agreeing with you.
Yeah. So now let's put this in today's terms of how important that this right is. Half the people in this country believe that we had a fraudulent election for our president last election. And I don't care which side of the fence you're on that. It is a incredible problem that half the country doesn't believe that we had a fair 2020 presidential election. So what Trump did is he filed lawsuits in these states. Those cases were clearly wrongfully dismissed because there was no discovery and there wasn't any evidentiary hearing. It was just a motion to dismiss, and the court said, yeah, there may have been fraud, but we don't think there was enough fraud, and so you don't have standing case dismissed. How do you know there wasn't enough fraud if you don't have discovery? But anyway, so Trump calls his supporters to Washington, D.C. A lot of people go there. A lot of people got in trouble, going to jail right now. It didn't end up good. It accomplished nothing except get people in trouble and put in jail. Here's what should have happened. Is President Trump should have prepared a memorial and remonstrance, attached his evidence to it. He gives it to a member of the House, pursuant to Rule 12, Section 3, has a duty to file it with the clerk. Trump's petition would be announced on the House floor, just like my petition was announced in that video you watched.
Right.
And then, according to custom and usage, they would refer that petition to the committee. And in the committee, Trump would present his evidence, present his proof. And the redress he would be seeking would be a do-over or a full audit. And that would have been aired on C-SPAN, and everybody would have said, Trump's full of beans, or we got a problem.
Right.
And everybody would have been satisfied with the process. Let me give you another example. My Tennessee Constitution says that we have a right to instruct our representatives.
Yep.
There's 16 state constitutions have that right to instruct.
Yep.
They considered that right in the United States Congress in the 1797 First Congress, adding that to the Bill of Rights and the federal Constitution. They decided not to. But when they were talking about it, this was Elvis Jerry, and he said, do gentlemen not conceive where the instructions may be so general as to come from all our constituents? If they do, it is the sovereign will. For gentlemen will not contend that sovereignty vests in the legislature. The friends and patrons of this Constitution have always held that sovereignty is vested in the people, and they do not part with it on any occasion. And to say that people have the right to instruct, or that sovereignty vests in the people and they have not a right to instruct, is absurd to the last degree. So what Elvis Jerry was saying in the first Congress is, if everybody wants it, that's the sovereign will of the people. Well, we all want term limits. Mm-hmm. So if we all get together and we all co-sign a memorial and remonstrance, and we present it to our state legislators, and we say, we're not asking, we're asserting our sovereign will, we're instructing our representatives. Most constitutions include the right to reform, alter, or abolish government. So we assert that right to reform government and alter our form of government with term limits. And I'm telling you, we get that done in the state legislatures, and we get a few states, then we can rally those states together and go to the United States Congress and get rid of these corrupt career politicians that have been in DC far too long. So this is literally how we can fix everything in this country. Government is oppressing this right. Due to my work, gentlemen in New Hampshire exercised this right in the New Hampshire General Assembly. They ignored it. In Tennessee right now, all they're doing is announcing them on the floor. They may be doing, some backroom proceedings like they did when they got rid of the Board of Judicial Conduct. But these things are not going to committee. They're not voting to grant or deny the redress like you saw in that House Journal. Mm-hmm. They're just, they're giving it lip service. I'm going to show you one more clip here. I'm literally fighting tooth and nail to restore this right here in Tennessee, and I encourage people to fight for this right in whatever state you're in. Anything that we try to fix, any effort that we try at reforming government, is not going to happen unless this right is.
Mr. Gentry, you reserve 3 minutes.
So let's talk about rules, Your Honor. This is the legislative rules of order. Rule 15, petitions shall be received read at the table. Shall creates a duty. Petitions shall be received and read at the table. Rule 79, anything not governed in the permanent rules of order shall be governed by Mason's legislative rules of procedure, latest edition. This is the latest edition. Section 149, subparagraph 4. Petitions are presented by petitioners themselves. This is a constitutional right that we have. When we talk about separation of powers, what it says is you're not supposed to exercise legislative powers. They're not supposed to exercise judicial powers. It says nothing about one branch not interfering with the other. Article 6, Section 7, judges Article 6, Section 6, judges may be removed by concurrent vote of both houses. Article 5, judges can be impeached. So can the legislative branch interfere with the judicial branch, and the judicial branch can't interfere with unconstitutional legislative conduct? It's absurd. Of course the courts have the power to interfere with government. And she says the Constitution is not clear. Constitution is not clear. That would make it void for vagueness. And the Constitution is not vague. It is clear we have a right to address those invested with the powers of government. Their rules say petitioners are presented. Petitions are presented by the petitioners themselves. It's in their rules. They have a duty. It's a constitutional right that we have. And let's talk about how important this right is. In the book Constitutional History of Medieval England, petitions, common and frequent, without the threat of force, took the place of prolonged discontent and the presentation of grievances at the point of a sword. This right took the place of violence, and it is the oppression of this right that we see the Black Lives Matter riots. It is the oppression of this right that we see the breaching of our Capitol. So I don't want to kill you with that whole oral argument. But what I want to show is this is what we have to do. I'm suing the Speaker of the House to present me to the body, and he's refusing to do that. And so, I'm grateful for people like you that are letting me educate the people that this is a constitutional right that we have. We should all be outraged that this right is oppressed. I mean, this is probably one of the most cited books on constitutional law in this entire country.
Right.
And he writes in here, this right of petition, it would seem unnecessary to be expressly provided for in the Republican government. He's like, I'm surprised we can go write it down. He's like, everybody knows we have a right to petition for redress of grievance.
Well, in the second article of the Bill of Rights in Kansas, it says all political power is inherent in the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority and are instituted for their equal protection and benefit. No special privileges or immunities shall ever be granted by legislator, which may not be revoked, altered, revoked, or repealed by the same body. This power shall be exercised by no other tribunal or agency. In other words, we have courts of administration now. We should be under tribunals and agencies. But goes on to say the people have the right to assemble in a peaceable manner, to consult for their common good, to instruct their representatives, and to petition the government or any department thereof for the redress of grievances. So, I mean, all the states have these things. It's just whether we have legislators or public servants who are willing to actually do their oath.
Well, it's not whether we have public servants that are willing to uphold their oath. What it is do we have citizens, people that are willing to stand up and defend their rights?
Right.
It is, of course, government is going to oppress this right. This right has at times been oppressed throughout history. In the Magna Carta, they wanted this right of petition to the king, and they fought a war over it. Here in the United States, in colonial America, British governors were actually removed by the king for oppressing this right of petition. So, there have been bad actors throughout history that have sought to oppress this right. But eventually, when enough people are outraged, and when the people, and this is not the fault of corrupt Speaker Sexton that's oppressing my right here in Tennessee. He's doing it because he can, and he's doing it because the people are lazy and apathetic, and they've become incompetent and ignorant of what's in their Constitution. And so when the people start standing up and doing their job, then government's going to start doing their job the way they're supposed to. It all falls on the people. And, we keep looking for a knight in shining armor. A lot of people hope for that with President Trump.
Right.
There's no knight in shining armor. If we mean to save ourselves, we're going to have to save ourselves on our own. Nobody's coming to save us.
True. Absolutely true on that, and that's the sad part. I was asked the question today on Flyover Conservatives. I was on their show earlier today, and they said, "Well, Jim, what do we do?" And I was like, I think I alluded to that in the very beginning of the show. It's right here. General Flynn says, "Well, local action has national impact." Well, the local action's here in your heart. Like, you have to have the heart for this. You have to be able to be willing to put forth the effort, just similar to how you've done it, where you're willing to go in and go, fight the legislative body, fight these judicial systems that are actually abusing us. But too many of us we're kind of tired after the end of the day, right? We're on the hamster wheel of debt. Obviously, debt doesn't matter because we got a bunch of bank bailouts going out where a bunch of people mismanaged our money and now are going to get bailouts by us, basically, or the deflation of your dollar by pumping money into them. But we have to fix it here, right? We got to get our hearts right and be the right people. And that means that once we do that, then the rest of it all really pretty much works out. But if you don't have this right anyway, you're not going to participate in getting your legislator back under control.
You're absolutely right. And the simplest way to understand this, you reap what you sow.
Right.
If you plant tomatoes, you're going to get tomatoes. You plant corn, you're going to get corn. If you plant nothing, you're going to get nothing. If you fail to sow in the spring, you're going to be a beggar come winter. And so, for the people out there, what seeds are you sowing? Are you even bothering to take the time to call your senator or representative? Are you bothering to look at the legislation? Are you going in and testifying against that legislation in the General Assembly? Are you accepting business closures from a pandemic? Right. Or are you remonstrating and standing up for your rights? I never advocate protesting in the streets. That is not what the right of assembly is. The right of assembly is coming together in taverns, churches, meeting places. Right. And coming up with a common interest and common problem that you want to get solved, and then you petition for redress of grievance. Assembly is about coming together, a meeting of the people. Yeah. It is not about protesting in the streets. Government has no duty, none, to listen to people in the streets. They don't have any legal document. They have nothing in front of them that tells them they have to take any action. Yeah, so what? We got a bunch of pissed off citizens in the streets, don't care. But when you present them with a legal document that is a remonstrance, or you make a legal application to present to them by oral address, now they have a legal duty. And, initially, we're going to have to fight for this in court. But, if you sow nothing, you're going to reap nothing. If you sit back and allow government to oppress this right, you're going to be oppressed. So you've got to relentlessly call your senator, call your representative, and say, why aren't you standing up to restore this right? For the people out there, I'm talking about sowing seeds, a lot of you want term limits. You're pissed off about government overreach in response to the pandemic. Learn how to exercise this right. Exercise it. Start sowing the seeds of liberty and justice as the founders did, but use the tools that they give us. And we can literally fix anything. Let me share. I've got a flow chart because I think this is a good time for people to see what is the process for this. So first step, you prepare a petition or application. So maybe the start off process for this is an assembly of people and say, what are we going to write in this petition? If we make this by oral address, who amongst us can articulate this best?
Right.
So that's the first step. Then you go out, and next step, you get signatures. Get as many as you can. Once you have enough signatures and you're content with that, you present that signed document to your senator or your representative according to their rules. And you heard me mention them in oral argument. Then your senator or representative files that document with the clerk of the House or Senate. Then the application is announced on the floor. So this is the step. We're right here in the middle right now. And what we've got to fight for is to restore the last three steps. The next step is that it's the petition is presented, not just a brief statement of the contents, but the actual petition should be presented to the body, read to them, or an oral address made if your Constitution allows that, and if your General Assembly allows it. Then historically, the General Assembly would send it to committee, and they would discuss it, and then the committee would make a recommendation back to the body, and then that's the last step, and then they vote on it. That's the whole process. Let me. This is mine. Let me show you mine here real quick.
Okay.
So this representative, Johnny Garrett, he's an attorney. I'm actually going to run against him next election. He did not want to do this, but here you can see this is his letter to the clerk. So he said to the chief clerk of the Tennessee House, please receive application by address from John Gentry and what I want, restoration of the right to apply for redress of grievance and proper purpose by address or remonstrance, and reinstatement of the propositions and grievances committee. And this next page, this is what he gave the clerk. It's just a one-page document. Mm-hmm. You don't have to do fancy diploma font like I used. I mean, you saw the one from my fifth great grandfather. It was just handwritten. That's all you got to do. But you want to put in there a brief statement. What's it about? I'm making application by address to restore this right. I got signatures from across the state of Tennessee, so I put that in the first paragraph. Large number of citizens across the state assert the right to apply for redress of grievance by address. And then I asserted some other rights in here. And you mentioned some of them earlier, Jim, about power inherent in the people. Let's assert that power.
Right.
So I put in here the right of citizens to remedy by due course of law and justice without delay, and right to instruct our representatives or rights also asserted. And then just a short statement. Here's what I want this to be. I've got another one. It's much longer. My first remonstrance was 72 pages, and it included 700 pages of appendix proof of corruption that's going on in my state government. And then I gave them a laundry list of reforms and redress that I was seeking from there. So that application that you just saw, that's a legal document filed. You don't have to be an attorney. So for the people out there watching the Jim Price show, start sowing the seeds of liberty and justice. Start exercising this right. And when they oppress that right, learn how to defend your right. Go out to the people and cause outrage. I mean, you just heard Jim read what's in your state constitution. Yours is strong because you have the right to instruct representatives. Mm-hmm. There's only 16 states that have that right. And that's an incredibly powerful right, especially if the instructions are coming from everybody, because then it's the sovereign will. So start sowing the seeds of justice. If you plant nothing, you're going to get nothing. If you sit back and allow corruption, it's going to grow, just like it's been growing since the 50s. And look where we are today, with these ridiculous spending that we see in Congress, bailouts that Jim's talking about. I mean, we got a mess, and it's up to the people to start fixing this. You know, it's the people and only the people that can the American way of life. Period.
Well, and that's absolutely essential that we think about this. I always talk about individual state rights supersede the federal government. The federal government has two functions: national security and immigration. And everybody's like, well, how do you run the country? Well, I don't know. We did it for, 150 years without having to worrying about how we gained money. And people don't realize that our country actually ran off of tariffs, which are national national taxes that on products and services brought over borders. Okay. Well, that wasn't hard to do back then, even though in reality, we didn't have a Coast Guard. We didn't have ports of entry like we have now. And so we were still able to commit commerce that way. But yet we don't think of it that we were able to have a country, we were able to fight and defend ourselves. We did lots of crazy things without, quote unquote, taxation. But yet the individual state rights and the federalist model that Lincoln put us into, people don't realize that when he told the South, you will comply, he created the Uncle Sam effect, which was really fell right into the bankers' hands and allowed us to have the creation of the Federal Reserve at Jekyll Island when we saw the creation of the IRS. Guys, all this stuff, if you don't understand your past, you don't understand where you came from, you're not going to know how to execute this stuff in the right way moving forward. And it's really essential to educate yourself in those ways. This is really, again, we go back to it's your country, you make it what you want.
Yeah, I like listening to you for a change, because you listen to these talking heads and all they do is create division.
Right.
And they don't talk about, what are the founding principles, what was going on, where did we come from? Mm-hmm. And they just create division. And we need to start talking about what are the solutions to these problems.
Right.
So when we came out with this pandemic, I started talking about the state right of nullification. Right. And as a result of that, I think the Speaker of the Tennessee House proposed a Nullification Act. And we've actually got one right now that's in subcommittee. It's called, it's HB 0726, I think, and it's Restoring State Sovereignty Act. And what it is, it's about restoring the state right of nullification. And Jim, let me give you an example of how far we have fallen in this country in our education. This is a history book for the state of Tennessee. Right. This was in use 4th through 7th grade, 1900 through 1929. And in this book, they taught kids about the state right of nullification. Children are not taught this. And the words of this book are, on that section, Congress may pass a law and the president may approve it. But if the people of the laws thought that this act unjust or in violation of the Constitution, the state right of nullification is the remedy. That James Madison in the Virginia resolutions and Thomas Jefferson in the Kentucky resolutions declared this right in 1799. And that I believe in 1799 came about from the Anti-Insurrection Act that the Congress passed. Can't talk bad about government. Isn't America literally the biggest finger to the face of government in reality? Just by its mere creation, we were anti-government. I mean, really, if you think about it, the only world power at the time, the only superpower ever known to be on Earth before that time. See, England had a navy, they had an army, they had outposts, they had bases, and America was the biggest anti-government movement ever, and yet we're over here cowering to our own people that created the anti-government movement. We should be empowered by our own story. Yeah, we should. And this is what I'm about is teaching the people what are the solutions. So we have this corruption going on in the federal government because our state legislatures have become too weak and cowardly and corrupt. And they're also, sucking at the teat of the federal government with incentives, for highways, for education. You do what you're told. And basically, they're giving us our own money back. They're extorting us with our own money. Say, if you comply with Washington's regulations, then we're going to give you these millions of dollars. And so they comply.
But they end up chasing like a lot of the school board money and all the Department of Education. If you're getting $1 million from the Department of Education at the federal level, it's going to take you $2 million to chase that $1 million down. People don't realize you spend the money and then even spend more money just trying to chase the money that they're supposedly giving you back that they took from you to begin with.
Our state legislators have forgot their power. So here's a solution. Is the General Assembly passes an act that federal income taxes that are withheld by state businesses, they're not going to send that money to Washington. We're going to send it We're going to send that money to the state government, and then the state government is going to send it up to the United States government. But whatever you are going to give us for education or roads, if we comply, we're just going to go ahead and withhold that back.
Yeah.
And send it back. They can start doing things like this. This Restoring State Sovereignty Act that's in our literally, it's on the calendar for tomorrow in subcommittee in the Senate.
Right.
And under that, this representative has proposed several ways. He's saying if the Attorney General determines that a federal rule or law is unconstitutional, then the governor can nullify it. And that law will not be in effect within our state borders. So this is one way they can protect against vaccinating our military against their will.
Well, what if we did? What if we went to a business plan? Because I've done a lot of business plans. I've written a lot of different, like, hey, we're going to buy this business or we're going to expand this business, and I've done this for decades. What if we just said, and any time in a business plan you have buckets, right? And you got a bucket for administration, you got a bucket for shipping, you got a bucket, you put buckets, right? And then there's sub buckets. What if we said that the city, county, state, and the federal government, you guys got a bucket, okay? And we're going to give you 10% of our GDP, and that's it. And so now you guys got to figure out what services you really think is absolutely necessary. Because of the federal government, your first two functions are national security and immigration, and that's it. So if you had to run off of 10%, let's say, hey, by the way, federal government, you only get to run off of what you bring in for tariffs. That's it. But you can't tax higher than 10%, right? So on stuff we're bringing in, you can't put tax more than 10%. But at the city, county, state, and I say city, county, state, you guys only get 10%. That's it. That's all you get. So you got to figure out how important it is to have all these extra services and all these extra charities and all these extra handouts. You got to figure out where you're going to really spend the money, because you can't just keep taxing us at will. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and this is how that could be brought into effect. And let's talk about solutions. Is through the state right of nullification. We can nullify federal law and say, we're going to do it this way. And how we get our state legislatures to start acting right and showing courage in there and actually represent the people rather than the lobbyists and special interests is we assert this right of remonstrance, and we start instructing our representatives about what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. It all comes down to, this right of remonstrance is the cornerstone of our constitutional system. And it is the oppression of this right that everything has gone wrong, that we have so much corruption, that we have all this special interest legislation transferring wealth, from the people to these special interests. It all breaks down, and it comes down to losing this right. And there's some other things with the alteration of our form of government. Uh-huh. We look at the Declaration of Independence. There's a whole bunch of grievances in there. And one of them is for altering fundamentally our forms of government, giving his assent to pretended acts of legislation and altering fundamentally our forms of government. Pretended legislation, what they're talking about is most all of the legislation of today. It's all pretended. It looks good, it sounds good, but the real purpose under the covers is just transfer wealth, right, and take it from the people and give it to their friends. Right. It's all pretended legislation out there. But if we start sowing the seeds of liberty and justice and start taking back control of our government through exercise of this right, we started at our state level. Once we get our state legislatures in line, then we can start reining in the United States Congress.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I was on a show on Friday night, and it started at 10 p.m. Eastern. It was really a late show. I ended up going past midnight. And the sad part of it is this person's like, well, I just passed the bar exam. I'm a lawyer. Like, they were all very proud of their moment that they were a lawyer. They're like, I'm a lawyer. Well, the sad part of this is I said, well, anything outside of the Constitution is repugnant to me. This is the problem is that my right of way, my commerce, my lanes of commerce is required by the Constitution to be maintained according to, my desires, and I should not be inhibited in commerce. And she goes, well, so you tell me 5-year-olds can drive a car? I said, yeah. Well, that's ridiculous. 5-year-olds can't do this. I said, well, they can do it on a farm. They can drive a 5-ton tractor around all day long. We're talking about something that's, we're talking about 20,000 pounds of machinery. They can ride around on grain trucks and haul cattle and do all kinds of other stuff. 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, doing it all day long. My son had a farmer's permit at a farm permit at 14 years old, and he was able to drive a vehicle freely on the right of ways. I said the problem is that you think it's okay. Well, the Supreme Court says. I said no. Supreme Court doesn't get to do legislation from the bench. They don't get to legislate. No, one individual does not get to shut the entire country down. That's not how it works. I have public servants who are to make sure that my freedoms and liberties are always ensured, and I'm not defaulting incarceration, but defaulting to freedom. And I said, we should be mindful of those things. He said, well, no. As at the Supreme Court in 1870, I'm like, no. Again, you're going back to no. What does the Constitution say first about this? What are we doing about and so the problem is, and this is an argument that I had with a gentleman who was actually the vice principal of the Wichita Public Schools at a high school, which Wichita Public Schools is one of the top 10 largest school districts. Like, it's huge. He's a vice principal, and he said this was about 6 years ago. He said the Constitution needs to be thrown out. It's an old document. It's not relevant to today's society. I said, well, the problem is that the Constitution is not the problem. It's that we start the last argument. We start this argument with the last argument where it ended. We need to start every argument at the Constitution. If you start at the Constitution when you start to want to limit somebody else, if you start at the Constitution when you think you need to make up a law, then you're going to find out that you need to stop everything you're doing. We keep going and we keep building on the last argument. And in reality, the Constitution's enough.
Now, there's a couple points to that I want to mention.
Yeah.
The Constitution, and this is right in the preamble of many constitutions, that it establishes our form of government. So when you say throw away the Constitution, you're saying throw away all government, because government would lose all authority at that point.
Yeah, that's what that's what this guy wanted to do. And he's like, well, we just don't need the Constitution. I'm like,
so until, people think of the Constitution and they just think, Bill of Rights, but that Constitution establishes our form of government, and it restrains government from a lot of the stuff that they're doing today, but it's our form of government. So unless you have a better form of government that you can come up with, that you can convince the people that they want to ratify a different form of government, until you can do that, you need to shut up.
Yeah.
Because that Constitution, it's an image of humanity. It's not perfect.
Right.
But it's pretty good, in all of its errors, in all of its beauty. It's one of the best documents ever written in the history of this entire planet out there. And I when you talk about this attorney,
yeah,
is another point that I want to make. In law school, and I have gone and looked at the curriculum of law schools, they have like 1 or 2 classes on constitutional law, and it's usually about the powers of the judiciary and the powers of the legal profession. They don't actually teach the Constitution.
Right.
And I can guarantee you, there is no law school out there anywhere that teaches the state constitution.
Yep.
And the state constitutions, like you see, federal constitution, right to petition for redress of grievances. Your Constitution, right to instruct representatives, apply to those invested with the powers of government for redress of grievances. The state constitutions are far more protective. And it is the oppression of that knowledge, too. And these attorneys, who graduate law school and they pass the bar and they think they know the law. What they know is rules of procedure in the courts, and they know statutory law, and they know nothing of the constitutional law. They know nothing of the principles and of why that Constitution was formed the way that it was. They know nothing of the history of why it was written like that. Why do we have a right to keep and bear arms? Why are there certain provisions in there, like the emoluments clause? My Tennessee Constitution says hereditary emoluments, privileges, and honors shall not be conferred in this state. You ask anybody out there, what does that mean? Just like this right to petition. We don't know what's in our state constitutions. And it is the states that have the power to control the federal government. but we don't know how to control our state government because we have become so incompetent of the knowledge of our state constitution. And I believe for every state out there, this is the starting point.
Yeah.
And it's a problem. You know, Texas Constitution used to be like Tennessee's. It's like 1,000 pages.
Right.
Same thing in California. They screwed up their constitution, but most of the Bill of Rights and the state constitutions are intact. And that's the starting point.
Well, and I wanted to go through, Virginia has a really cool, I wanted to see if I was trying to find it real quick while you were talking. Virginia's, power, people are the power, to all the power is vested in and derived from the people. And it doesn't say anything about whether the legislators get to be cool and they get to tell us what to do. It also says no man or set of men are entitled to exclusive or separate emoluments or privileges from the community, but in consideration of public service. So this is, again, this is in Virginia. I wanted to get to their part where it's the right to bear arms. Let's see here. And that's the part where we don't even talk about, like, the well-regulated militia is a well-practiced people's army. And we don't talk about that. Oh, here it is. Section 13 of the Virginia Bill of Rights, it says that all well-regulated militia, a well-practiced people's army, composed of the body of the people, trained to arms in the proper, natural, and safe defense of a free state. Therefore, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That standing armies in the time of peace should be avoided as dangerous to liberty. It talks about it right there. And that all cases, the military should be under strict subordination to and governed by the civil power. There's so much about that we don't even participate in our daily lives, understanding that we have all the rights. We have all the abilities in the world to be able to tell these people, these public servants, what they can and cannot do. But again, we don't have legislators, we don't have lawyers, we don't have judges, we don't have DAs that are willing to participate in that at all.
Yeah, this is, when you talk about the right to bear arms, where that came from was under the reign of King James III, and he disarmed Protestants, and then he quartered Catholic troops in Protestant neighborhoods, and they were tortured, they were harassed, excessive fines.
Notice the handshake between the crown and the religion. Well, remember that? That's how is it the religion gives the king the crown, and that's all going back to the Friday the 13th through the Knights Templars as well. So
that was the first step, and this was in the United States Congress. And this is one thing I despise. When your attorney friend is talking about, well, the United States Supreme Court said this. I really don't care what attorneys in black robes have to say. I really don't. They're all corrupt. I don't trust any of them. And so why would I want to listen to what an attorney in a black robe? Attorneys.
That's an extension of the British authority into our country. You think about how all that is. Black robe judges have nothing to do with the court of record, which is what we're supposed to be under.
But the Forbes magazine, years running, the least trusted profession is attorneys. Mm-hmm. Least trusted of all professions. Best, most trusted are nurses. Attorneys are at the very bottom.
Yep.
And justices, judges, they're just attorneys in black robes. And what, you're just going to trust them because they got a black robe now?
Yeah.
But what I like to listen to is what do the founders have to say about the rights. And this was in the first Congress discussing the right to bear arms. And he said, whenever governments mean to invade the rights and liberties of the people, they always attempt to destroy the militia in order to raise an army upon their roofs. Mm-hmm. And so when you listen to what these guys are talking about, the right to keep and bear arms is to protect the people against government invading upon their rights and liberties.
Right.
But this right of remonstrance is, in today's world, the right of remonstrance is more powerful. Let me give you an example on this. So in the beginning of the show, you saw the announcement of my remonstrance on the House floor, right?
Right.
And then as a result of that, the Board of Judicial Conduct, they removed like 14 people from office, and they replaced that agency now with citizens, attorneys, and judges instead of all judges, right?
Right.
That was one person with a legal document presented to the legislative houses. Now, I was a Force Recon Marine for 8 years. I'm highly trained in small arms and hand-to-hand combat. And I actually worked as a third-tier hostage rescue team. Traveled all over the world as a pre-deployed force to rescue hostages, if they start throwing out bodies. That's what my job was going in and clearing out buildings. So let's say I geared up and wanted to reform my government and went down under threat of force of arms and said, I want you to reform this corrupt judiciary. Right. What would have happened is I would have been killed. It would have been a big mess. They would have discredited me in the media and said I was a crazy nut job, and they couldn't justify it by reforming that board of judicial conduct. Wow. So when you think about what I did with a piece of paper compared to what would have happened had I taken up arms, that right to bear arms that's last ditch effort. When things get bad, that's when it's time to take up arms. Right. But this right of remonstrance, we can start to fix things today. I hear this from so many people, and I'm so disgusted by it. Yeah. Is they say, well, we can't fix anything until we take up arms against government. That's the only thing they're going to listen to. And I'm so disgusted by that, because what have you done? Joe Citizen out there, what seeds have you been doing other than just complaining and voting? How have you been defending your rights? I'm setting an example here in Tennessee. I'm learning my rights. I'm teaching my fellow man what his rights are, educating the people on this. I'm fighting them in court. I embarrass them. I am not afraid of them. I go out online. I say, this judge is corrupt. Yep. This senator is corrupt. I accuse them publicly. I dare them to try to come after me for contempt. I dare them to bring a libel or slander suit against me, because I know how to defend myself in a court of law. Right. So this is not the last ditch effort, but we got to make the first effort. Yeah. To start speaking out and asserting the power that is inherent in the people, taking back our power, not just waiting for a knight in shining arms, not waiting until it's too late and we got to take up arms. It's time to start doing this today and asserting our voice in our government and not taking no for an answer. Yeah. Well, we got to get going here, but give us real quick how we can find you and get in touch with you. My name is John Gentry. I'm a candidate for office here in Tennessee. If you just Google John Gentry, you'll find me here in Tennessee. But my website is We the People, V as in Victor 50.com. So that's like We the People versus the 50 states. Perfect. We the People, the 50.com. That's my website. I write a lot of essays and articles that I post on my Facebook page, John Gentry, candidate for office. I ran for governor last election, going to run for House seat. I used my campaign as a platform to teach the people, educate them about that. I wrote a book on the Tennessee Constitution, explaining the entire Declaration of Rights, explaining where government is acting in gross violation of the state constitution. That's on my website. I put my heart and soul every chance of every day that I can. I'm in there fighting to restore rights to the people, standing up to corruption in government, not taking no for an answer. And I hope people will learn about the work that I'm doing. God bless you, Jim, for having me on and giving me this time with your audience. I'm forever grateful for that. Yeah. And get out there and fight, people. Jim's doing it on his show. That's the seeds that he's planting. He's out there teaching. You've got to start stepping up too. Do your part.
Well, John, thank you so much. We'll get an update from you here soon and see how things are going for you. Again, people reach out to him and get to know him. He's obviously a patriot. He's out there trying to do the right thing for all of us. So, John, thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you. Bye-bye. All right, guys. Well, as we go through our days, this is where rubber meets the road. We see the destruction of our dollar. We see the destruction of the banks and the world around us, that we're over here wondering what's going to happen next, how we're going to recover from all these things. And yet these people are out there writing checks saying they're going to bail out the big banks. They're going to do all they can to make sure that they come out solid. And then, guys, I don't want to bail out Silicon Valley. I don't want to see how our money is going to be used to manipulate their bank balances. They're not doing that for me. If I come up a little short here and there, or a whole lot short, they don't care. They're just going to apply fees to me, shut my account down, do all kinds of damaging stuff to my life, and they can go out there and continue to do what they want to do. I don't think it's fair. I think we ought to be mindful that the world around us is an absolute dangerous place right now. These people are not in this for your best interest. Be those right people. Guys, thank you so much for the time you've given me today, and it's been a privilege to be able to be a part of your family and what's going on. Remember the 10% we do for our neighbor, community, city, county, state, the federal government. The more you do for them, the less they have to do for you is learn how to be selfless and not so damn selfish. Now, see, I know it sounds weird, but if we're doing more for the world around us, we quit coming back to Uncle Sam to take back that money that they took from us to begin with. Guys, remember, hold the line, hold fast, do not give up, do not give in. We'll win, I promise. I don't make promises I can't keep. Guys, this is your world. Make sure it's your heart and your mind where you need to have it. Be the right people at the right time. Remember, the future, your future is a reflection of your heart now. Make sure your heart in the right place. Being better than you were being better than you were the day before every single day. Guys, this is your world. Make sure it's the right place, right time, right person. You got to get all that stuff right? Inside here, you want to know where that local impact has national effect, right? No, local effect has national impact. You guys, however you want to phrase this, I know General Flynn put it out there. That local action is right here in your heart. Start right here where you got to be first. Get that fixed, and the rest of it will work its way out. All right, guys, thank you so much for everything you guys are doing out there. I'm Jim Price, the Jim Price Show Daily Update. You guys will be good to each other out there, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.